I'm gonna record this. In the last 24 hours, the Atlanta Falcons have acquired not just one, but two defensive stars and are in serious position for even a Super Bowl in 2024. What's the deal with that? Welcome back to What's the Deal, episode 2, where today, bit of a sidetrack, okay? Usually I want to focus these videos more on cap space, but the Atlanta Falcons just keep making changes, and hey, I'm also making changes, okay? Cameras in cinematic mode, you got all HD of this. I got lighting, the setup is incredibly goofy. I'm praising the Falcons, and I don't know if you can see it, I got a Saints banner in here. A lot of changes are going on, but I'm not here to talk about myself, okay? I'm here to talk about the Atlanta Falcons. And first, I want to talk about the moves they made, what it means to the team, how I evaluate the team, because again, a lot of change with the Falcons this past offseason, and the success I think it could bring to Atlanta, and then some additional changes I think they should make. So as a general overview, specifically, the Falcons acquired pass rusher Matthew Judon from the New England Patriots. If you know Matthew Judon, he always wears red sleeves to every game. He's going to fit right into Atlanta. But specifically, the Falcons run a 3-4 defense, a defense he usually plays in. And look, he's on the wrong side of 30, and he's coming off an injury, but that season-ending injury was to his bicep. Okay, if he's on the wrong side of 30 and he tore his ACL, okay, now I'm concerned about what sort of production he could have. Embarrassing. Oops. But in the season before he tore his bicep, as in 2 seasons ago, he had 15.5 sacks, and the Falcons just gave up a 3rd-round pick to get him. And you're expecting to win a lot of games this year. That's going to be a late-round third. I'm not worried about what you gave up for him, especially the upside of 15.5 sacks. Point to Simmons, plain and simple, you got one of the best safeties in football, which is absurd, because you already got Jesse Bates III, who probably is the best safety in football. You couple that with Justin Simmons, you now have one of the best safety duos. So, going into the offseason, if I was a Falcons fan, I would have been really worried about how are we going to improve our pass rush and how are we going to improve in secondary. And again, just in the last 24 hours, you have improved both of them tremendously. But I want to take a step back beyond the last day and really talk about some of the big moves the Falcons have made this offseason and why I think it will contribute to success. And again, I want to talk more later about additional moves I think they should make. It wouldn't be a discussion about the Falcons offseason if I didn't address the quarterback dilemma. And I'm actually not going to do that a whole lot. I made a YouTube short about my opinions on the Michael Penix situation, and I actually like that draft pick a lot more than other people. The focus of this episode is on 2024 success anyway. So, Kirk Cousins, right? You get him for 4-year, $180 million, $45 a year, which somehow is a discount now. Anyways, Kirk Cousins will slot right in. He might not be top 3, but he's definitely top 5 quarterback in the NFC. Well, who is he throwing to? I actually like the Falcons starting receivers a good bit. Lacking depth, we'll touch on that later. But you got Drake London, who should be poised for a breakout. Same with Kyle Pitts. Big body threats, should definitely be chain movers and red zone threats. You went out and got Darnell Mooney, who's a great possession receiver and very underrated. You look at his stats and you only see 1,000-yard year. But he played with the Bears. Not a whole lot of talent around him. Not a whole lot of talent throwing him the football, at least talent that doesn't involve strictly scrambling. And I think he'll be a very good possession complement to those two guys. Unfortunately, you did get Rondale Moore, who I really like. You got rid of Desmond Ridder, nice, to get Rondale Moore, who I think would have slid into the slot really well, but he just got injured and is going to be out for the season. But between Pitts, Mooney, and Drake London, that's some legit threats in the passing game. But to hell with the passing game. You got a great offensive line, you got Bijan and Tyler Algier in the backfield. Hand the ball off 30 times a game and you're going to win a lot. Moral of the story, I like the offense. Defensively, again, like I said earlier, I thought the biggest weaknesses 48 hours ago were pass rush and secondary depth. And they have just addressed both of those positions, again, in the last day. It's just unbelievable, guys. You go, in the last day, you get 2 defensive stars. If free agency had just begun, and it was March and free agency just opens, and you're like, oh my god, we got Matt Judon and Simmons, you're elated. This is August. This preseason started and you just got 2 stars. That makes no sense. That does not usually happen. Got to cool down, but bonkers. Look, already on the Falcons, you had AJ Terrell, great corner. Jesse Bates, great safety. We're going to talk a little bit more about the other corners, though, in a second. In your front 7, it's solid. Grady Jarrett's your main star there. David Onyemata, very solid. And Zach Harrison, well, we haven't really seen a whole lot of him, but definitely potential. Talk about linebackers in a second. Nonetheless, though, defense, another check mark. But probably the most important position or acquisition the Falcons had was getting a new head coach in Raheem Morris. So to have an adequate opinion on Raheem Morris, I wanted to go through his history and share that with y'all. So he started his career as a defensive backs coach in Tampa. He became the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers from 2009 to 2011. 2009 to 2011 were not remarkable years. 2009 you went 3-13, 2010 10-6, 2011 4-12. But if you know a little bit about football history, you'll know that Josh Freeman was not a remarkable quarterback, and that was his quarterback for those 3 seasons. I mean, for context, in 2011 when they went 4-12, he threw 16 touchdowns to 22 interceptions. It's just hard to win football games, and that's what your quarterback's doing. And also, Raheem Morris was in his early 30s at this point, which is definitely young by head coaching standards. I mean, I don't know if y'all remember when they hired Sean McVay at, age 31, the announcers wouldn't shut up about it. So, I'm going to throw him a little bit of grace for his first head coaching gig. He went back to be a defensive backs coach in Washington from 2012 to 2014, and then was back with the Falcons in 2015, where he was an assistant head coach, defensive backs coach, and defensive passing games coordinator. But 2016 to 2019, he's still assistant head coach, but he switched to wide receiver coach, offensive passing game coordinator. So we see him get involved in both of defensive passing and offensive passing. And in a passing league, I believe that experience to be very valuable. So 2020, he's the Falcons defensive coordinator. Head coach gets fired, he's interim head coach, but you see this a lot. An interim head coach, regardless of how, unless they're ridiculously successful and the team just loves them, they're probably going to get fired and the team goes a different direction in the offseason. So, technically got fired from being an interim head coach or just let go. However you want to look at it, he ended up on the Rams. As the Rams defensive coordinator, 2021 to 2023, obviously a lot of success, including winning a Super Bowl. I do take a bit of a grain of salt with how good of a defensive coordinator he is, at least with the Rams. I mean, look, I feel confident that I could coach a defense with Aaron Donald. But nonetheless, offensive and defensive experience, he has had a winning season in his head coaching tenure. I do think this is a really good hire for the Falcons. It's hard to win games when your head coach sucks, and I don't think that'll be the case for the Falcons. I really don't envision him being a bad head coach. Maybe not great, but I'm definitely optimistic if I were a Falcons fan. I think this could be room for improvement. So, what does all that mean? Look, I like the defense, I like the offense, I like the head coach. How many games are they going to win? Well, when you look at the schedule, there's only 3 games I look at where I'm like, yeah, you're probably going to lose that. That's Week 2 Eagles, Week 3 Chiefs, and Week 9 Cowboys. But, aside from that, your opponents are the Steelers, Saints twice, Bucks twice, Panthers twice, Seahawks, Broncos, Chargers, Vikings, Raiders, Giants, Washington. I mean, that's a lot of winnable games. I very much see a ceiling of 14-3 and an absolute floor of 11-6 with this team. And look, a floor of 11-6 definitely means playoffs. So I've said a lot of positives about the Falcons, and as somebody who grew up a Saints fan, I cannot allow it to all be positive. So I definitely have some concerns I wanted to address, and I kind of alluded to this earlier. So, off-ball linebackers, right now you got Caden Ellis, who is good. He's fine. And you also have Troy Anderson, who's very athletic. I can't say I'm terribly confident in that unit. Cornerback depth. You are one injury away from Kevin King being your starting corner. You really don't want that to happen. And you also just receiving options as a whole on the offensive side of the ball. Look, right now Ray McLeod is your starting slot receiver. And he has talent, but in I believe 5 seasons, his most yards in a season was 277. So that doesn't strike a whole lot of fear into me. And it's not like you have a whole lot of depth behind him. So again, these are mostly depth concerns, but another concern, more overarching, more on par with what I want to talk about at the channel, is they only have $8 million in cap space next year. So they've already kind of pulled some money into this year saying, we want to win this year. And winning's cool. Winning's great. But if you're not winning a Super Bowl, what does it matter? And right now with the Falcons, I see a very solid roster. But as I alluded to earlier, I don't think they're good enough to beat the Chiefs. I don't think they're good enough to beat the Eagles. And I'm not so sure they're good enough to beat the Cowboys. I think there's a little bit of tiers, right? There's, your genuine Super Bowl contenders, and then you got Falcons. And, man, the Falcons are close, but I'm not sure they're there yet. especially with some of these depth issues they have. So what are you going to do about it? Well, in my opinion, you've gone out, you made some big moves to say, we want to win games this year. Great. Don't stop now. You need wide receiver depth, and I think there are some decent wide receivers out there. The one I really, really like going to the Falcons is Juju Smith-Schuster. Now, look, he hasn't done a whole lot with the Patriots. Who has done a lot with the Patriots since Tom Brady left? I think you could bring him in. He's had success when he hasn't had to be the guy, when he could just be a kind of a secondary at best piece, and when he has a good quarterback throwing him the ball. Look, he's put up 1,400 yards before. He won't do that with the Falcons. He won't. But I do think he could slide in there really nicely in between Drake London and Darnell Mooney. Other receiving options, there's also Corey Davis, but he retired and then unretired and then I think retired. So I don't know what's going on with him. I wouldn't count on him. Definitely like Juju more. But another receiver option that I just love, makes no sense, but Michael Thomas. Do you imagine how funny it would look for Michael Thomas to be in a Falcons uniform? Wait, that's more silly. Juju's definitely my favorite for wide receivers. But cornerback, I definitely think you do not want to risk Kevin King starting a game. You don't want that. Ask any Packers fan. And there are actually some really good cornerbacks available. Look, you got Xavier Howard and Stephon Gilmore. At one point in these guys' career, which well past their prime, but at least at one point, these guys were in talks like, is that the best corner in the NFL? A lot of talent there. Hell, even veteran talent. Actually, you don't need a whole lot of veteran talent with Jesse Bates and Simmons, but nonetheless, a good cornerback to have in the room. And I will say, unfortunately, there's not a lot of great linebackers. You got Zach Cunningham, Quan Alexander, who's always had potential but never quite, I would say, really maximized it, and Anthony Barr, who is definitely past his prime. But look, not a remarkable list of 3 guys I just named, but they play the position, I guess. But I definitely think depth can't hurt, especially when I do think linebacker is a weakness on this team. So, just to restate my thesis here with the Falcons, love the roster. I love the moves they made. They have been very confident. And you can especially see that in Penix. They say, we're going to win now, so we'll go ahead and get our quarterback for the future. We're not going to have the 8th overall pick again. We're going to be a team that wins. I like the confidence. I mean, I just like the roster they've assembled. But I don't think it's there yet. I still think there are some pieces to be added. I still think there's some talent to be developed. I still think there's some depth to build on before this team is really going to make serious noise, at least for going for a Super Bowl. So my plea to the Falcons, if somebody in the organization is watching this, is don't stop now. Continue adding talent. Continue getting better. It's very, very bizarre to see a team all of a sudden start pursuing these stars in August. But you've already done it. Keep doing it. You guys are close. Good luck. Again, Saints fan. But again, I'm going to switch back to cap-focused videos in the future. I was actually working on one, but then I saw Simmons got signed, and I was like, oh my god, I got to talk about the Falcons. So this is more of a kind of a extra video. Nonetheless, I hope you enjoyed. God bless you. Thank you for watching. Ciao.